Well, some brand new research into attention deficit disorder, ADHD, and how it impacts adults. It suggests that grown-ups with ADHD are more prone to binge eating or alcoholism, and that it should be treated as early in life as possible. That's some of the news today. But that study raises some interesting questions about the diagnosis of ADHD for all of us, but specifically for children. The author of a new book suggests American children are being misdiagnosed and mismedicated. The name of the book is called ADHD Nation, and the investigative journalist behind this book, Schwarz, is our guest. Nice to have you, Alan.
Very nice to be here.
You say instead of overdiagnosed, overmedicated, you like the term misdiagnosed, mismedicated. Why is that?
Well, because I think it focuses on the individual children who are being examined and considered, okay, rather than focus on the population of kids and how many percent, which is an important consideration. What I'm trying to do is have people focus on, here's a kid in front of us who is having problems, no doubt. Okay, should he or she be diagnosed with ADHD, or are there other problems going on, or are there other forces acting upon the consideration of this diagnosis?
Here we are at the beginning of school year. There's a lot of discussion about ADHD, really, quite frankly, whether you're in school or not. And I'm just curious how you came to this project. Why were you interested in investigating this? Well,
until last month, I was an investigative reporter at the New York Times, and I had for about 5 years been at the forefront of the investigation into football and sports concussions. And I really focused on that for a long time. I felt like the job had been done, and I had heard that kids in my native Westchester County, kids in high school, were snorting Adderall before the SATs to focus, and because of academic pressure. And I was interested in that. Again, it's an academic pressure story, but it was only in finding out where do they get the Adderall that I discovered that the diagnosis of ADHD was being mishandled so badly across the United States. The data showed such a bad scenario.
Tell us about the data. What does the data actually show us?
Well, according to the CDC, 15% of American children get diagnosed with ADHD during their childhoods. 11% right now, and by the time they turn 18, it's roughly 15%. 20% of American boys, 1 in 5, and 30%, almost 1 in 3 boys in some southern states get diagnosed with what is generally called a lifetime, potentially devastating brain disorder. And it simply can't be that prevalent. There are other forces working to make this diagnosis, and I think we have to discuss what those are.
You're a parent. As a parent of a boy myself, yeah, he's 2 years old, and you can see as they start to grow up how different people, whether in schools or family members, want to label your child. And so if a parent had a child in school and the teacher says, hey, I think there's something going on with your kid, they should be tested for ADHD, as a parent, you can understand, oh, you want to help the child.
Absolutely.
So talk to us about that tension between wanting to help a child that looks like they might need help, but actually diagnosing them with ADHD, which is something different.
I think you've hit on it perfectly. First of all, it's illegal in a lot of states for the teacher to utter the word ADHD.
Really?
Because he or she would not be a medical professional. And because in the 80s and 90s there was a lot of pressure from teachers and other school officials, they said you can't do that anymore. But the point is that there's no question the child is struggling in some ways, and in some ways that they notice, in some ways that only the teachers or the grown-ups notice. And they should be evaluated for whether it's anxiety, whether it's bullying at school. There are a lot of reasons that kids have trouble focusing or are hyperactive or impulsive beyond attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
What did you find in your investigative reporting on this? If you could condense it as to your big conclusion, what would you want people to know about ADHD?
I think that the important thing is not to have the argument that has been going on for 50 years. Is it real or is it made up? Okay, is it a real disorder or are we medicalizing childhood? Let's put that aside for the moment and focus on whatever it is and whatever the diagnosis may represent. It's not in 15% of children and 20% of boys. We need to be a lot more careful, and it's the responsibility of doctors. They're the ones with the prescription pads. Okay, Big Pharma has its influence, but they don't prescribe. Doctors need to pay more attention, whether they're pediatricians or psychiatrists or developmental pediatricians or nurse practitioners, whoever they may be. They need to realize that all that coughs is not bronchitis, and all that is distractible and impulsive and hyperactive is not ADHD. Some of it may be, and that's great. I'm not going to argue against that. but it ain't 15% of kids and 20% of boys.
That is a shocking statistic. I'm glad we ended there. And of course, there's further conversation about what does this mean as we look many generations out with this medication being a part of so many lives. It's great to have you on the program, Alan. Congratulations with the book. We look forward to reading it, and I'm sure our viewers do as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.